good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Arrow?
Absolutely fantastic and blessed to be talking with you because I believe in shows like this, Police 24/7. And the reason why is because we don't know. As the average everyday person in this real world, all we have are headlines and fake news. We don't know.
I would say that's exactly true. I mean, it's like we all think like when you go to work, anything could happen. But I think most of us that go to a normal office, it doesn't even compare to what these guys and females and males are dealing with out there in the field.
You know, one of the things that I really do put pride in is thanking them, because in reality, this is a war zone on our own soil. And every day they step into that moment.
Well, I think you don't know what you're walking into, right? Like you're there to help people in need. And it's not until people need that they, I think, sometimes realize, oh, my God, they're just kind of standing by. I think we all have it in the back of our head that someone's there to help us. But I think it's until that moment that you genuinely realize it.
I would love to sit with a focus group with people that think that, oh, this is all scripted out. This is all laid out exactly the way the producers want it. Man, listeners need to understand this is not scripted out. I mean, you do not know the outcome, do you?
No, we don't know anything. I would just say, like, as a layman, like, I feel like I learned a lot during the process, you know, like just like what the day to day is like and what stuff that they consider the most dangerous versus what we would have thought as, you know, regular civilians was the most dangerous. But for them, like a traffic stop, like you're always like, we all think police officers love to pull people over. For them, it's like the scariest part because you don't know who's in the car and you don't know what's in the car with them.
Wow.
So it's interesting, the stuff where it's always like, don't pull me over, don't pull me over. We've all rolled through a stop sign. We've all done like the basics, but it's like, and we all think about it from the scary point of view. But for them, it's, you know, there's almost a lot more on the line than there is for us.
You talk about doing that California stop, that rolling through a stop sign. The last time that I did that, the second that I did it, I pulled over to the side of the road because I knew I was busted by the police department. And they kind of chuckled when they came up to my window because they're going, you knew you did wrong. And I said, of course I did wrong, but I wasn't going to have you chase me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even understand the chase. Like that to me is on a whole other level.
Oh, my God.
The chase thing is like, I just don't get it. It's just like, I'm not trained. I can't drive that way. And like, I don't know, like my biggest fear is like getting into a car accident personally. And then like, God forbid I hurt someone else. Like, I definitely don't want to hurt myself, but I worry more about hurting another person. It's like, I'm not Mother Teresa, but like just as a human, like you just have to think like, what the hell? Like if you're going down a road, you know, it's crazy.
Your honesty in this show is because, I mean, I like the way that you make it the real deal. This is about the real men and women. And I got to tell you something, when I'm sitting in my neighbor's man cave and we're watching this show, I mean, it's one of those things where we sit there and we pick out favorites. We like to, you know, talk about moments and things.
Of course. That's only normal. That's called being human, right? Like we all like certain people and we all like certain things, but it's different. Like even within like the office watching, like it's like interesting. It's always like, you know, an NBA draft. Like when you're watching stuff, it's like everybody always has a favorite, whether it's a dating show, this type of show, or survival show, like different folks, you know, different strokes for different folks.
You know, how do you prepare your imagination for something like this? Because I'm a firm believer in what I call stream thinking. In other words, I have to believe in the presence of right now and act right now and just trust that what I'm doing right now is going to be the right way. You've got to be going through the same thing.
I think that's all you can do, right? Wow. I think you have to put yourself in their mindset of like, all right, I'm going to work today, a calm day is actually a good day for these guys. You know what I mean? Like if nothing happens, it's considered a win. Wow. Or if it's a slow day, that's a win. And I think like we all need to appreciate that too, because there's some days that are just so hectic. And like also, it's like you put yourself into the position of like, there are some days, you know, you don't sleep well at night, or, you know, you get into a squabble with your spouse or your kids being blank. It's like these guys also say no matter what's going on in their life, like these men and women just have to go to work and be like completely level-headed because they don't know what's coming their way. You're right. So it's really interesting to like put yourself in those situations and be like, wow, you know, you can't let whatever's happening in your life affect anything. And like, how many people could really do that? Like these people do, But like, you know, we all like go into work and we'll be like, ugh, I'm having a bad day, or I had a bad night. It's like, you know, these folks are not afforded that same luxury.
Would you say that Police 24/7 on CW is the new water cooler conversation? Because this is the kind of stuff that people take to work, or they take it to other circles of people. People want to talk about what they've experienced.
Well, I think people do want to talk about what they experience, but I also think there's so much talk about like what's going on in the world that I think it's like a good time. I would say that I'm getting to the point now, like I went out and I was out for coffee over the weekend. I was like standing in line waiting for coffee and someone was talking about it. I'm like, oh my God, are they talking about the show? And like when that starts happening, that's when you're like, okay, I think we're on to something. Because there have been times, you know, in my career where you're sitting somewhere and you're like, oh my God, they're totally talking. But it was interesting because it was the first time that like you heard someone talking about a conversation and it wasn't like what they think was happening and what it was, because the show was just factual. It's just like, this is what it is. This is what happened. And like we show what really goes down. So it was people actually, you know, not giving their opinion, but more or less talking about what they saw, which I thought was like interesting.
Yeah, because this is more than just a 2-minute little flick on TikTok or even on Reels on Facebook. I mean, I think that's the reason why people are so glued to this, is because it really does play out in our imagination. It's almost like a modern day storytelling.
It is. It's kind of like, I think it's cool, right? Like, I think in a way, it's like you really feel like you're in a car.
Yep.
And you also really feel like you're in a city more than you're watching it. I think you feel a little bit a part of it. And I think that was something that we were, you know, playing around with when we were talking about the approach. I mean, we were just putting camera guys, you know, in regular cars driving with us and shooting like different angles and different whatever, because you can't do any of that once you're in the car with the, you know, officers. Like once you're in, you just go. There's no time to mess with anything. There's no time to mess with an angle, a light, nothing. You just get in and you go. So all that stuff we were working out, we're like, you know, how do you make it a little bit different? Because, you know, I am someone who has watched these shows, you know, growing up, I did with my folks. And, you know, as an adult, I do, you know, also I watch other ones. So there is something about it where, you know, we all love reality TV, myself included, but this is like reality TV I would say on another level.
Yeah. What is the connection to these cop shows? Because everything from Barney Miller to Dragnet, I mean, Adam 12, we've always been attracted to police stories.
Oh my God, think about the biggest stuff, like between like CSI,
Yes.
Law and Order, Blue Bloods. I mean, back in the day, I used to make fun of my mother for watching Murder, She Wrote. I'm like, she's got to figure it out, right? It's like 8:50. There's 10 minutes left in the episode. She's going to figure it out. I think those are all lovely and bookended, and there's a certain amount of whodunit involved. And I think there are a little bit of like people that like crossword puzzles and brain teasers and that type of thing, because you are actually thinking about like, what's the outcome? What's the end? It is like a little bit of like a John Grisham novel, you know, when you watch those scripted shows. And then I think when you come to the unscripted version, you're like, which is essentially where all the scripted shows get their information from.
Yeah.
You know, like art imitates life. There is a little bit of a rip from the headline situation. And it's interesting, but like when you watch one of these, you're almost like putting yourself in the position, as where in the other ones, you know, you're watching a show, you know, you're like, this is scripted, you know, there's a certain amount of Hollywood to it, and you're just trying to figure out the ending. I think in these, you're trying to be like, what is going on? I think you're more like in it in a different way.
How long does it usually take a police officer to get used to those guys that are and around them? And the reason why I bring that up is because Taylor Swift knows where every camera is at all times. And she plays up to it. These police officers do not play up to those cameras at all.
Well, no, they don't play up to the cameras at all. And honestly, most of them are so used to it now because of all the body cam and dash cam footage, which I think maybe a couple years ago or 10 years ago, it might have been different. Now they're on camera all the time anyway. I think that's the difference. I think like I can't talk to how it was before all those cameras existed, but I think now it's like it's anyone that started in the past 10 years, it's honestly just a part of their job. And it's small. It's just one person in a car. It's not like a whole big thing.
Man, you talk about a team of one. And, you know, I've always talked about that, about being in radio. It's a team of one. It's not a team of many people. But now you put a camera in there with one police officer and they're taking on the world. I don't understand it.
Well, no. And it's interesting because a lot of them, you know, you always think, when I think police, or at least when I used to, you always think partners, right? You always think there's two guys in a car. So you're going to get like almost like the Starsky and Hutch kind of day. But now, like, most police officers ride alone.
Wow.
So it's super interesting, right? Because it's just them out there, like, you know, figuring it all out.
Do police academies study your show? Because, I mean, you really do identify a lot of realistic things.
I don't know. I think we're too new to know, but like, I do think it's pretty interesting. And I do think we've gotten a lot of people reaching out, just saying like, wow, this feels legit. This feels real. And, you know, I would say there's no element of sugarcoating. It's just a matter of like just true facts, you know, like you say, all the episodes are different because every day in every place across the land, it's different. And I think even, you know, across the country, like different people deal with things differently, but also like the same person has 5 different things happen to them in a day. So the way that they react to 5 different things is also interesting.
So I know what it's like to capture a moment. I don't know what it's like for you to know that in your heart, you just captured a moment.
I think you're not really thinking that way when you're doing it. I think that there is so much happening that the men and women that are out there are just kind of like doing their job. I think you just go into almost like robot mode in a weird way, right? Like you're still a human, you have feelings, you could tell, but you're also like in a situation and you're there to just document it. So, you know, you're just trying to stand back, stay out of the way, and, you know, cover it the best that you can. But the biggest point is like stay out of the way and stay true to what's happening. But there's no way to fake it. If it's there, it happened. That's it. If it didn't happen, it's not there. In
the most recent movie, Civil War, the journalists were there for that Civil War. They were in the shootings and things. They were like in the center of all the action. I can't imagine what you guys are going through when you're in that moment where the police officer is showing up on a scene, because there's got to be some sort of fear or high anxiety.
I think there is, but I think it becomes like a roller coaster, like adrenaline rush, right? Like you're just like when the car, I mean, it stops. I mean, a simple stop can go from 0 to 100. There's times you're just pulling someone over. You're like, all right, you know, and then all of a sudden, like that car will take off or it will turn into something so much bigger. And I think there's no telling, but there's a million, you know, times when you just pull people over and you're just pulling people over. It's someone like you who rolled through a stop sign, or it's someone who just like made a turn, didn't put their blinker on, or, you know, made a common mistake. And I think that there's no telling the difference. And sometimes a common mistake, you know, happening to a different person could actually uncover a lot. You're like, wait a minute, it's, you know, just by scanning someone's license, you find out like, oh my God, this is blank.
Yeah.
So I think, again, you never know.
Yeah. Yeah. That routine stop, as a martial artist, they trained us how to go through that routine stop. And that is put your hands on that wheel and let them see them at all times, and make sure that you speak very clearly. And if you need to make any move, you've got to tell them exactly what you're about to do.
Yeah, can I please get my license out of the glove box? Can I do this? Can I do that? I think that's the most important thing. Like, if you think about it, like everyone's, you know, it could be a fairly easy situation, but I think like given what's going on in the world, I think everybody just has to like respect where the other side is coming from, right? When you get pulled over, you're nervous. At least I am. You get like shaky and nervous. I think that's like a human behavior, right? Like it's like you got caught with your, you know, hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. And then for the police officers, they don't know what they're walking up on, and they don't know if it's just someone who's like, hey man, I'm sorry, or someone who, you know, is involved in something very different, and there's no telling.
Would you say this is a modern day Scared Straight, or are we well beyond that?
You know, I don't know. God, I used to love doing the Scared Straight stuff back in daytime talk. Is it a modern day scared straight? No, I don't think so. Because I think even when you I don't know, maybe it is. Because when I watch a show like this, I always am like, what would I do if I was in that situation? I always try and put myself in every situation, no matter what the show is that I'm watching. Even if it's a dating show, I'm like, what would I do? What would I do? So it could be a bit of a scared straight of just like, come on, dude, just be normal. Like, these guys don't want to hassle. You know, I say guys, I mean men and women. I always say guys, but they're not looking for like a hassle either. Like, I don't think anybody wants it to turn into something. It's just a matter of like, when it does, you know? So I think keep that in mind too. Sometimes it's just like the way you handle it is what can escalate a situation. It's kind of as much up to the driver or the perp than it is anybody else. I mean, you know, how you respond to something can really change everything.
I can't imagine a modern day police officer in the way that language barriers, you have to understand street speak. I mean, there's so much that's going on at one time. And because you walk up to a car and the person that's in that car doesn't know English, I mean, I don't understand how they're even going to get the word across.
You know, it's funny. There's a lot of police officers, I mean, you know, that do speak multiple languages. And then there's always, you know, someone to help for sure. And like, don't forget, like we all have our Google Translates and all that kind of stuff, which are tools that did not exist like back in the day. So I think that like if there's a will, there's a way. And sometimes, you know, it might take a little longer or whatever, or it's definitely trickier. But I think you still have to like assess the situation the same way you would anything else.
Wow. I would love to go through the psychological test that you must put your photographers through, because I mean, you can't just put an average Joe Blow in there. It's
a thing. You know what I mean? And I also say there's plenty of people that like have to try it. You know what I mean? In saying that you don't know how you're going to react until you do it.
Wow. Wow.
So I would say like behind the scenes, I always say to someone like, you know, give it a whirl, obviously with proper training. And if it's not for you, you know, it's not like the regular job where it's like, you know, you need to give 2 weeks notice. If it's not for you, just raise your hand and like, we'll figure it out together.
Wow.
Because I think like, you know, you can't assume that someone's going to know exactly what it's like to be in that position until you're in it. You can think you know, but I think until you're in it, you just don't know.
So many men and women who have served this nation in the military, when they write books or they do movies, they have to go through an editing process. What about you guys on the streets of America? I can't imagine the censors that are watching you from CW.
It's a lot. I mean, but also I think we censor ourselves in a way. Like you have to tell a true story, right? You want to be fair, but it's the same as any other show. Like, you know, you can't do excessive cursing. It's honestly, you're following the same rules on this show as you are in any other show that you would make. And I think that, you know, I don't want to say you watch a little closer, but I think you do. You watch a little closer. It's the same thing. You can't air people's faces that don't, you know, sign a release. It's honestly the same thing that you follow in any other type of programming. And, you know, I just think, you know, there's a certain amount of training that, you know, goes along with it. But that's with every show. But every show has a very different type of training. And this show, the training just goes to more like straight documentary style of like how to stay out of the way, how to like not interfere, and how to not, that's the thing that we, you know, are most proud of. It's like you're just honestly just following what's happening day to day.
Wow. Where can people go to find out more about you? Because I mean, you really do create things that are about our everyday world.
I mean, for me, I don't know, watch the shows, you know, like I would say that's all I say. I mean, this for me was something that like I wasn't, you know, I never thought this would be an area that I was working in, and now I'm in it, and it's kind of like interesting and eye-opening, and it's like every day you're like, oh my God, in that realm. But I like that. I like the type of thing where you're looking at good old everyday people. I just do, because I think that's the thing that like we all relate to more. And when I think about the history of TV, it's like, you know, news was the original reality show. Then it became like daytime talk shows was all the rage. and then on the late night shows, even like the Carsons, the Lenos, all of that, there were always those human interest segments with like, stupid pet tricks or like meet this guy. And I think America just has a fascination with real people because I think we all see ourselves in everyone, both good and bad.
Yeah. You got to come back to this show.
I will. You name it, and I'll come back.
Absolutely. Because you're brilliant. I love your story. I love where your heart is. Be brilliant today, okay?
I will. I'll try. You too.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Watch Police 24/7 on the CW Tuesday night, 8 p.m.